Any more points for the opposition? Gareth?
Okay, two things. First of all, I want to talk about what Ralphie said. I disagree. If there's like potholes in my road, here's what's actually going to happen. I'm going to think my rich neighbour's going to sort it out, and I'm going to spend my money buying more crisps. Everyone's going to do that, and it's not going to get sorted out. Secondly, I agree with what Alice said right at the start, that actually this debate's focused really narrowly on kind of the treatments of minorities. I want to broaden it out. I want to look at something called collective action problems. A perfect example of this is something like global warming. There is no value in me personally taking the decision to not drive around the place if I had a car. Why? Because I lose something, but really it doesn't actually affect the big picture that much. Even if I got all of us in this room to do exactly the same, it still would damage us but have very little impact on the big picture. This is why we need states. To stop things like overfishing, to stop things like global warming, which everyone kind of agrees, or broadly agrees, that this is a harmful thing to all of us, but which individually we don't have the power to do anything about. Proud to oppose.
Okay, and now I think it's about time, because Cal is likely to run over in this picture speech, to hand over to Mr. PPE to not only sum up the proposition case, but his case.
So I think today the debate broadly rests on 4 main points. Who would build the roads? Is democracy society? Does the state protect the poor? And is the state moral? And I also want to show that the last 2 points are basically the same according to their case. So who would build the roads? Well, Graham, unfortunately I don't know. We'll be in the residential areas in a house on one side of town, and then all the shops are going to be on the other side of town. We're just going to be stood around scratching our heads wondering what to do next. It's going to be a difficult situation. Nobody's going to have any idea what they're doing. I haven't fixed that problem yet. I'll get back to you when I solve it. Is democracy society? Well, I would say not. I think democracy guarantees tyranny, actually, Jamie. I think it's quite interesting with you social democrats. You seem to believe that, you know, one day the right guys will get in and they'll fix the presently corrupt system if only you vote hard enough. You know, doesn't it ever occur to you that maybe these bad incentives are inherent to democracy? That maybe every democracy has ended up this way because the voting system is, you know, the ballot is the slave's suggestion box by which you seek to expropriate the other slaves. Lobbying, for example, has a rate of return in America of 22,000%. For a large corporation, it is the best investment you can possibly make, is a donation to a congressman's campaign, because you get so much money back through subsidies and regulations to beat out your competitors. So again, democracy is just benefiting at everybody else's expense. Also, your boss isn't like a politician, he's not like a king, he can only decline to associate with you freely. Under a state, the powerful will exploit you by force. People can break down your door and demand your tax money, no matter how hard you vote against it.
I completely disagree with this analysis. If you're rich enough, and there isn't a government, there isn't a judicial thing which you must run through, if there isn't any such forces like those which are acting upon the society, then yes, I'm going to have that person killed and shot. Like, sure, I'm sure we can all think of some people which, if there wasn't like a law,
that's what we patronise private defence corporations for. That's how we we patronise private courts. It's not like nothing, you know. Anything that the state presently does, except for bombing Afghan children, can be done through the free market. I think that's rather an improvement. Also, by the way, Halsey, thank you for your earlier points. You know, yes, I agree. We must protect the children. Yes. But are we to be the children of the state? Are we all to be regarded as children, as tax slaves, as, you know, disabled people unable to protect and defend ourselves? Is the state moral? Well, actually, this whole notion rests on 3 claims. First of all, protecting poor people is worth theft and murder. By the way, it is the only function of the state, according to that side. The state can best protect poor people, and there is nothing else the state does that's bad ever. I think that last one is patently wrong. Present drug laws, present invasions of our civil liberties, present invasions of our privacy, these are things we can broadly be said to be against, that nobody else should have the right to, have anything to do with our private lives, and yet it is nonetheless permitted, and you will never get the right guys in charge to fix the corrupt system, because that is simply, inherent to the system. Now, can the state best protect the poor is a subset of is the state moral? Well, no, I don't think it can. No, thank you. I think voluntary donation is a much more moral way of helping the poor. I also think the poor can much more easily help themselves because of the additional capital accumulation, the ability to, start a small business, actually employ people without all of this ridiculous employment legislation, including, things like national insurance that make it so difficult to employ people today. And finally, on the problem of the tragedy of the commons, that would be the final the final claim that the state is permissible, well, I think that you should be fixing that through property rights rather than through society. Because, of course, the problem with the collective action problem is, overfishing, for example. If everybody has an equal stake of the same lake, what? No! If everybody has an equal stake of the same lake, then everybody's going to want to fish in it because they lose nothing by doing so. But, of course, if it's your little bit of the lake, or if it's your lake, then you have an incentive to protect that bit so that then you will have fish next year. So if everything is owned, then you don't get that tragedy of the commons problem. It is a problem that happens when society is supposed to take charge of things. So, finally, my friends, I tell you, if you, as Thomas Paine said, if you prefer the tranquility of servitude to the animated contest of freedom, then may your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were ever my brethren. Thank you.
But anyway, it's dangerous labelling Jamie though, because I don't think he's a social democrat anymore.
Oh no, I'm on his side now.
But now Cal has waited 7 years just to do this debate, but the rest of us has waited 7 years for this moment. So I welcome Mr. Endersby to sum up the case for the opposition and the whole debate.
I've really enjoyed the past 7 years. I've enjoyed my time at Bishop's, and most of all, I've enjoyed the debates and Cal's part in those debates. So what I want to actually start off with is a little bit about Cal. And, I am so old that, I remember when Cal was a Lib Dem. I remember the switchback political journey he's had, with so many twists and turns it could give you nausea. But actually, I'm that old. Actually, Martin's that old. He can probably remember when Cal had all these different views. And thanks for the support, sir. And where does anarchism come from? But over the last 6, 7 years, Cal's given a huge amount to debates and debating at Bishop's. And I just actually want to use this debate to recognise that. Many of you here today, Cal will have done stuff with you in the lower and middle school. Many of you, the more senior debaters, you'll have partnered Cal in debates or practised against him. And I think everybody, who's in the senior debating will recognise the challenge that is wondering what Cal will come up with. It's a shame that the girls have gone, because there was the famous time where they were arguing women should be allowed to carry weapons in self-defence. And Cal's op to that was there should be no restrictions on anybody carrying any weapons in any form of self-defence. But it's always thought-provoking. It's always provocative. And what Cal has brought to our debates, as well as a wonderful sense of wishing to persuade and engage and take seriously the audience, he's brought ideas that other people wouldn't have advanced, wouldn't have dared to advance, or wouldn't have known about. And he's made people think about them. And one thing that was a beautiful moment today, which could only happen at Bishop's and only happen because Cal's been at Bishop's, is Cal made a reference to Hobbes and everybody laughed. Other debating societies don't get 17th century philosophy jokes. Thank you, Cal, for that. I'd also pay testament, to Cal actually as a successful competitive debater, and I think, the best result we've had at the Oxford tournament was Cal working with Gareth, and that was excellent this year, and other people who benefited from what he did in practice too. So let's turn to this debate, and I think it's probably good to talk about fish first, because it's somehow like you're going to have a bit of the lake, and presumably you're going to have a little bit of the Atlantic, and if I have some bit of the Atlantic that's like 3,000 miles west of Ireland and 2,000 miles south of Iceland, that somehow that's going to deal with the problem of overfishing, because I don't know, somehow I'm going to have my own private little gunboat there preventing you from nicking my fish, and that will deal with all the problems in the world. So some of the flaws of anarchy have turned up. Quickly, what I think this debate boils down to is, what is the value of the state? Where are the greatest dangers to us from an anarchisticalist society, Graham, or from some form of democracy, however flawed? And thirdly, how lucky do you feel? So, what's the value of the state? Jamie talked about this, and Cal did in his first incarnation, the first coming of Cal. Is the state wholly oppressive, designed to steal from us, designed to take things away and show the worst forms of greed and suppression of the individual, both in the private sphere and in sort of economic sphere? So, no thank you. And while we feel that in the private sphere, maybe we want to restrain the state, Jamie and Ollie have both talked about why economically a completely free-for-all society could be, a very bad thing. We need the state to provide some regulation. We've talked about roads. I mean, I'll tell you what will happen. What will happen is what used to happen before the government built roads. Rich people paid to use roads. Poor people couldn't use roads, couldn't get their goods to market, couldn't access resources. That's what happens if you do it entirely through the free market. We have argued that the state is not only protective but enabling. And I'm going to ask Cal a couple of rhetorical questions I want everyone to think about. First, if we're talking about consent, who checks there is consent? Who checks that in some kind of deal between the state, individuals and other individuals, that both sides are equal parties to that? And secondly, in terms of drugs, does that mean that, as a free individual, you can go around and sell drugs to 10, 11-year-olds? Should they not be regulated? So we think those consent issues lead to dangers. We think the weak will go to the wall. Thank you, Rollo. We think the disabled and those who cannot afford to survive in Cal's competitive society will be greatly harmed. And so how lucky do you feel? Do you feel you're going to be able-bodied, bright, lucky, get on in life? Or do you worry that one day you might need the state? And if you think you don't need the state now, and that you could survive in the dog-eat-dog society that Cal's put forward, even if you're on top of that society, do you want to live in it? Do you want to bring children up in it? We say no to anarchy. We think the state has a role, and it is society in action, protecting and enabling. Actually, I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
We'll have a vote. So, who votes for the ghost of anarchy, past, present, and future? That is Cal.
Yeah.
Oh. I might have to count these. $17. And who votes for the opposition? Oh.
Can I just make the point we're using our mechanism to test?
Can I secede?
So Cal got 17 votes, and the opposition got 21 votes.
Oh.
Well done, thank you very much. And finally, tomorrow, as the Year 12s are going on study leave, the Year 13s are doing our final debate, which is This House Believes the Only Way is Salisbury, which will be me, Jamie, Ollie, Alice Yevko, Louis McBride, and Megan Jones. So thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.